Well, there you go. There's a belt buckle for um, getting 100 miles at a race called A Race for the Ages this past weekend. We also got like a little acrylic stand thing, a medallion deal saying I was there. They also had jackets, which I didn't order, but I did order one once I got there. And then nicely, they made a book about a bio of everybody, and very impressive, these people. I think about 160 some people in this race. And so let me tell you about my weekend real quickly. I was able to get 100 miles in. I consider, as I put on Facebook, I consider, for me, the gold standard for 100 miles is a typical trail race. I'm saying this for some of my trail running friends, so I don't want you to think that I'm equating, even though I did do 100 miles, and I'm proud of that at a timed event. But for me, the gold standard is a typical 100-mile trail run where you have 30 hours you need to get done in. And there are a few races even longer, Hard Rock and some others, 32, which I will never do. So for me, I'm looking forward to that day, which I think is going to be in November, Tunnel Hill, if not Indiana Trail, where you've got 100 miles to cover and you have to do it in 30 hours or less. Okay, but I'm really proud of the 100 miles. How do I feel? Amazingly, the day after, I stayed Monday night in Manchester, got up really early and got home before noon, and I was just a little sore. And now today is Thursday. I mean, actually, even yesterday, I feel fine. I'm just tired. I'm not as bone tired as I was yesterday, or even more the day before. But I feel pretty normal, which I'm kind of surprised, and not in a way too. So I want to kind of go through about the race and how it all went. It's a very unique timed event. Timed events are typically 6 or 8, 12, 24, 48, 72 hours, or 6 day, and there are some other wild events that go on much longer. And so this one, no, I don't know if anyone's ever done this kind of race before, but it was based on your age. And so the idea by Laz, who's known for the Barkley Marathon, just look it up. It's a crazy event. Just look it up. Just a very unique, neat guy. And he was talking, he said, some of the elites from the past who did Western States and all the biggies back in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and timed events, they can't make those cutoffs really anymore, many of them, at the big 100-mile races. So let's give them an advantage at a timed event. And then some people, that's all they've done is timed events. They've really honed in and specialized. And it's different from, like I say, a standard trail race, but it's got its own set of challenges, unique challenges, especially when you're going those 72 hours or 48 hours. Wow, you better have a strategy. You just don't keep going the whole time. You have to have things worked out. So he decided to do a race that finished on Labor Day at 6 p.m. Your starting time is based on your age. And so the very first guy, Dan, he started at 6 a.m. On Friday morning of Labor Day weekend. And then about every hour, or pretty close to every hour, one or more people were starting, okay? The average age out of this 160 was 56 years old, which I'm guessing is probably a record for that high of an average age. The biggest group was in the 60s. I think most people, the biggest groups were from 60 on. Not a lot of young people, they didn't have a chance. And so you won by getting the most miles in. And one of the younger guys who's renowned, Joe Feehees, I think that's how you say his name, he did 200 miles. Just came in and crushed it, just going and going and going. But there were people like a guy that I walked with a little bit, Don. He set a new American record for 48 hours for somebody his age, which was mid-70s, I think. I can't remember exactly right now. And so it's a unique timed event. On a 1-mile loop at a park called Dead Man Park. Only Laz would come up with something like that. And so a lot of great people. Ann Trayson was there, and she's a renowned, I consider one of the greatest women ultra runners of all time. Some of the records she set at some races still stand years and years later. She's 55 now. And she got in 110 miles, and she said, I walked with her for a while, and she said, if anything, this is a reunion. And it really was. It was just great hearing people telling their stories. Remember back in 72 when we did Western States? Or do you remember this and that? You're looking at them going, that guy did Western States? But it's been a long time since then, 30, 40 years. And so it's just neat to hear the stories. Some of them I think had not probably done an event for a while, but many of them still do them and are setting records and just going at it. They love doing it. A little bit about my experience. I did not change shoes. I changed my shirt some, but that's about it. No real blisters. I did squeeze in some naps, and they had splits, and I could have turned in my timing chip earlier, but I didn't. So they're saying that I used 58 of my 63 hours, and I've gone through, and you can see most of the time I was in the 13-14 minute per mile range, and then sometimes it ranged up to 20 when it's crazy hot, and everybody was walking at that point just about. And then you'll see when you see them past 20, then that tells you that I either stopped to go to the bathroom or stopped at my 10 and 8, and then you'll see here's an hour break, 2 4-hour breaks all throughout. So I have roughly figured out that I used to get my 100 miles. I was basically on my feet to do that for about 33-34 hours. Okay. And again, I don't make a direct comparison that with a typical standard trail race, but still, nonetheless, it's good training for that. But you know what? 100 miles is 100 miles, however you do it. So I'm proud of that. It got really, really hot. I had bags of pieces of watermelon and strawberry and grapes, which I used. I was right near the route, my tent, so I could just run over, grab stuff out of a cooler, and go. They had full meals, and you wouldn't obviously do that in a marathon or half marathon, but in a multi-day event, they had catered meals. So I paid $95 to have all these meals, and they were great. And so I'd go in and just sit down. So I typically would sit and eat for 15-20 minutes, and then the next loop I would definitely not go as fast, and then I get going again. You even saw umbrellas pop up sometimes because it was so incredibly hot out there. You did see some running in Luna sandals or some kind of sandals. And even you saw people with, they had a pair of shoes with cutout toes because their feet were swelling. But you saw the shoes, you saw a ton of Hokas and Ultras. Other shoes too, but a lot of the Hokas. And so people came with a strategy. I heard people even before they started say, well, I'm going to go so many hours and take a 2-hour nap, or I'm going to just go to my hotel. Some did that, especially some of the older ones. They'd go to their hotel and just during the heat of the day and just, they disappeared. And then they'd come back and go all night long. What was funny for me was I got to pass people, I even lap people, but I always kept in mind, yeah, they were slower and older, but quite often they were going all the time, and so some of them got more miles than me, or not too far away from what I got. Okay, so I had a momentary lapse there. I just could not think what it was. It was a great event. You got to meet a lot of people, and again, for me. I use kinesio tape for taping like big toe, little toe. I put a piece of tape on the bottom of my foot where I have a crease to avoid this one blister I can get. And I use Blister Shield powder for my feet. It works great, keeps them waterproof. And then I use Sport Shield, they're towelettes. They've got a roll-on thing, but I don't like that. And so I use this stuff for lubrication all the other places. Works great. I reapplied it 2 or 3 times. And so it was a great event. I'm looking forward to my next 24-hour, which is a week from this weekend in Cleveland, National Championships for 24-hour race on asphalt, right by Lake Erie. 2 weeks later, I think it's 2 weeks later, then St. Pat's in South Bend, which is a 3-mile loop on trail, which I really prefer trail if I can have it. And then a month later, Tunnel Hill, 100-miler, and that's where I'm going to try to get my first, what I call my official 100-mile race, where just a typical standard trail race. So it was a great event. It was a 4.5-hour drive, which was nothing compared to what some of the people had to do. But it's nice, again, going to these, and then people pop up that I've seen at other races. So it definitely is a social event as well. So I was pleased a year and a half. It's now a year and a half after my you-know-what. And to be able to do this is just, it's a real blessing. And I'm just really, really grateful. And I think that's enough about this race. So a race for the ages, or as some called it, a race for the aged. Great event, and I'll just keep on going. Did you like that, Dot? See y'all later.